Hey everyone, it's Dustin here at Ball Breakers. Today I want to go through our 8-step process on how to break in a brand new Wilson GST Leather Football from start to finish. Here at Ball Breakers, we're actually the only company online that breaks in leather footballs and gets them game day ready for you so you don't have to. Whether you're a flag football, high school, college, or even a professional athlete, everyone knows that having a fully broken in leather football not only helps you increase the grip, but it'll also help you increase the accuracy, distance, catchability, and more. So let's go ahead and dive into our 8-step process. Number 1 is going to be dye removal. So that's going to be actually getting all of the orange dye off of the actual football, especially because it's very slippery. Number 2 is going to be drying and also applying the shaving cream to remove even more of that dye. Step 3, we're going to be using our Wilson brush throughout the entire football to help add a little bit grip, but as well start to turn it that darker brown color that you see. Step 4 is going to be applying the conditioner and really working on the leather and starting to soften up that leather. Step 5 is going to be really just letting that conditioner dry for about 24 hours so it really soaks into that leather and softens it up. Step 6 is going to be one of the most important, and that's going to be applying the actual mud to the football. Now the reason we apply mud to the football is it helps to soften the leather even more, but then it also starts to turn it that really dark brown color that you see in college games, on TV, and so on and so forth. We are going to want to let that mud sit for about 24 hours, and then we need to wipe it off, and then we're going to use an actual brush to make sure that all of that mud is actually off before the next step. After that's done, it's going to be step 7, and that's going to be applying our actual wax to the football to really add the additional grip onto the football when you're using it. And then the last step is going to be step 8, which is one of the most important steps, and that's going to be going out and actually using your football and having fun with it. Score some touchdowns, throw it around, and the more you use this, the better it's going to get every single time. Alright, so now that we went through the 8-step process, let's go ahead and dive into each one of these steps fully so that way you guys know exactly how to go through and fully break this in. Step 1 is going to be the dye removal. The first things you're going to need is you're going to need a bucket, some warm to hot water, and a rag. I personally like to use a smaller rag. Some people like to use a big towel. What I like to do is I like to fold it up so it's much easier to use in my hands. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dip that rag into our warm to hot water, really get it pretty soaked. And then what we want to do is we're going to go through each one of these panels and really scrub and get all this dye off. The reason we're doing this is there's an orange dye that comes on this football and is very slick at the beginning when you first try and play with it. So if you don't remove this dye, then it really hinders the entire rest of the process. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our wet rag and we're just going to go panel by panel and brush and try and get all this orange dye off. You don't have to press real hard, but you want to probably spend around, I'd say, a minute or 2 on each one of these panels. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to the next panel and do the same thing. You are going to want to dip your rag in and get it pretty wet quite often. I usually do this every time I'm going to a new panel, because what you'll start to see is you'll actually start to see the actual water start to turn the orange yellow color. And that's when you can see that the actual dye is starting to come off, and you'll start to see it on your hands as well. So you're going to go through this and go through the entire football, and don't worry about getting the football too wet. It's okay if it gets wet. Remember, this is a football you're going to use outside when it's raining, or when the grass is wet, so on and so forth. So it's not going to hurt it if it gets wet. Make sure to get in all the little crevices as well, and you're going to go through the entire football and the edges as well, and make sure that all that dye is off. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video, and I'll see you guys here in a second when this is fully completed and all wiped down. All right, we're back. So just wanted to show you guys the difference after using the rag and the water for the dye removal. Do want to show you guys first, if you did it correctly, this is what the water should be looking like. See how all that orange? That's the dye that comes off the ball. This is actually after wiping down the ball. You see how it's a lot darker, it's wet, This is going to be one that we're going to work with now until this one dries. You do want to typically let this one dry. It'll probably take you, an hour, maybe a half hour to dry, and you can use a blow dryer if you want to speed up that process. But what we're going to do next is step 2. So step 2 is going to be applying the shaving cream to the football to really make sure that we're pulling out all that additional dye that we missed by using the rag. So what we're going to do, and I just use Barbasol, just plain Barbasol. What we're going to do, and I'll actually put on my glove here, so you guys can see. I don't know if you can see that, but you'll get the dye all over your hands when you're doing that first part. So what I like to do is I like to put gloves on for this part. So all you're going to do is you're going to go on each panel of the football again with the actual shaving cream. So all we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of shaving cream here, or a lot, and then we're going to take it, we're actually just going to rub it in on the entire football. You don't have to worry about, with the Wilson GST Leather Footballs, of getting the shaving cream on the laces or the stripes. It's not going to hurt it because you're going to use a brush to get it all off. But you really want to make sure that you're getting and rubbing that shaving cream in as much as possible into all the areas to really make sure that we get all of that dye out. You don't want any of that dye because it's going to get all over your hands if you're using the ball, if it's wet outside, so on and so forth, and it makes it really slippery too. So all you're going to do is you're just going to go through the entire football panel by panel and just rub in the shaving cream. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video here until this is completely done, and then I'll come back and show you guys what the next step from here is. Alright guys, we're back. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like when you completely cover the ball with the shaving cream and what the next step is going to be from here. So once we've got the shaving cream completely all over the ball, and as I mentioned, don't worry if you get some on the stripes or the laces, it's not going to hurt it or anything like that. Obviously don't try and cover it over those, but if you get some on it, it's not going to hurt anything, right? So now what we're going to do is, after this is sat for, probably 15-20 minutes, what we're going to do is we're actually then going to use our Wilson brush to actually remove all of this shaving cream off. What this is going to do is this is going to help to not only start to turn the football that darker brown color, but it's going to help to remove all of that actual shaving cream and that dye off as well. What I do recommend, just a quick tip, is I do recommend to have at least 2 of these Wilson brushes. You can buy them online, wilson.com, or you can even get them through Amazon, or you can get a Wilson kit, which comes with the wax bar and the brush. The reason I recommend having 2 of these is, one, for the football and for things like this where you're using it for the shaving cream. The other is going to be when we apply the mud. You want to have a brush that's only designed to take off that mud. So let's go ahead and start the process of getting the actual shaving cream off. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the brush and we're going to go through each panel and really brush up and down each panel to get all of that shaving cream off. So I'll show you guys. If you look there, see, it starts to take all that shaving cream off, and it also might be hard for you to see, but it starts to add a little additional grip to the ball as well, and a little bit darker shine to it. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go through each panel of the football. Make sure to get inside the little creases and crevices as well to get all of that shaving cream off. Okay? When you're doing this side where the laces are, I usually just go up and down your small little brushes to make sure that we're not hitting the brushes on the stripes or the laces. So get as close as you can and just go up and down. It doesn't take much on each panel to get the actual shaving cream off. So you're just going to keep going through each panel and make sure to get as much of that shaving cream off as you possibly can. What I like to do is then I like to flip it over and do it again. You don't have to push real hard, but you want to be somewhat firm to be able to make sure that you're getting all that shaving cream off and help to turn it that darker brownish color. This is just one of the steps. And then, as I said before, make sure to get all inside the little crevices there to get all that shaving cream off as well. The last piece you're going to do is the very top edges. So you want to go through panel by panel up at the top, and then at the very tip as well. And then same thing on the other side. Okay, so once it's done, it might be hard for you to see, but what it does is it adds a good amount of extra little grip to it. Also starts to turn it that darker color, and what it does is it removes all that additional dye that was left on the football that we might have missed from the very first step of the dye removal. So now what we want to do is go into step 4, which is going to be applying the actual conditioner to the football. This is a very important step because this is going to help to actually soften up this leather. When you first get a leather football, it's very hard. The edges are very hard. And trying to throw this, your receivers, if you're a quarterback, your receivers are not going to be happy with you. So what we want to do is we want to apply a conditioner to the football. This is one that you can get. You can buy it directly through Wilson, Amazon. It's just a football prep conditioner that you can buy. It's about $15, $20. It might be even cheaper now. But what we're going to do is you're going to need a rag. Okay, so with this, all we're going to do is we're going to do each panel of the football with the conditioner. So what I like to personally do is I like to actually dump some of the conditioner on the football panel, and I like to take my rag and go through and wipe it back and forth on that panel. Now, the one thing I can say is don't be stingy with your conditioner, because you really want a good layer of conditioner throughout this entire football. And then our next step is going to be is actually letting it sit for, I would say, 10 to 12, even 24 hours. The longer you let it sit, you want it to really soak in and soften up that leather before we move to the next step. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to just go ahead and fast forward through this process because it does take a little bit of time, and then I'll come back and show you guys what the end looks like with the conditioner all over the football. All right, guys, so we are done with putting the conditioner on. So I wanted to go ahead and show you here what it looks like with conditioner all over it. As I said, don't be stingy with your conditioner. You know, add it as much as you can. Obviously, you don't want to over lather it, but make sure that you get it in all the creases on the top. You know, you don't want to get it on the laces or the stripes, so try not to, but make sure you get it in all the areas that you possibly can. So now what we're going to do and what our next step is we're going to let this dry. This is going to be step 5. I recommend to really let this dry overnight to really let the conditioner soak in and try and soften up this leather. The nice thing with the conditioner as well is it does add a little bit of extra grip to the football as well, not only just softening it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for about 24 hours or even just 12 hours and really let that soak in. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and then we'll go on to the next step, which is going to be one of the most important pieces, and that's going to be applying the mud to the actual football. And I'll go through that whole step with you guys and explain why it's nice and good to have the actual mud on it, what it's going to do for the leather, so on and so forth. So I'll see you guys here shortly. So it's been about 24 hours and we let this conditioner really soak in and help get the football really nice and soft. If you're not happy with how soft it is, you can always apply another round of conditioner and let it sit in as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step, which is going to be step 6, and that's going to be applying our mud to the football. So the mud that we use is Lena Blackburn. So this is actually some really cool mud. It's not like mud that you would just go get out in your yard or something like that. It's a special mud. It was actually used for baseballs, but using it on footballs, what it does is it helps to soften up that leather even more, treat the leather, and then you'll see once we start to get the mud off after about, I'd say 12 hours or so, once we start to get the mud off, you'll see that it starts to turn it that really dark brown color. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and actually apply the mud. So when you get it, I don't know if you guys can see that, it's a pretty wet type of mud, but the one thing I do like to have is just a bowl of water sitting by, because one thing I do like to do sometimes is just dip my fingers in there a little bit to get a little bit of moisture on it, just to be able to help spread it over the ball a little bit better. So what we're gonna do is you're just gonna grab some of the mud, and I do recommend to use gloves. And it's a little hard to see, but basically what you're gonna do is just grab a little bit, and you're just gonna start on one panel and really just rub it in on the football. Now I don't recommend to get this on the laces or the stripes of the Wilson GST football, just because if you get it on the stripes, it really does turn it that dark, muddy color. But then again, you're gonna be using this football out on the field, so it's kind of up to you. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep grabbing some mud and make sure that it's coated pretty well. You don't want it to be too thin of a layer, because then it's not really putting much of that mud and soaking the mud into the leather. So I say do a pretty good amount of layer on each one of these panels. The other thing to keep in mind too, if you're trying to preserve the logos or the foil or anything along those lines, sometimes this mud can scuff up the foil or the logo. So, if you don't want that to happen, then maybe don't use the mud, or just be very careful with using it. All right. So now that we've got the mud all over the football, basically what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go to the next step and just let this sit for about 12 to 24 hours. The reason why is we wanna let this mud really soak into the leather. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna help to soften up the leather, and then also it's going to turn the ball that dark brown color. What we're gonna do is once this is soaked in and we let it sit for about 12 to 24 hours, we're gonna come back and then we're gonna go ahead and go through the next process of actually getting the mud off of the football with a wet rag, about warm to hot water, and then we're gonna use our Wilson brush to actually remove the actual mud from the football. And then from there, we'll go on to step 7. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this dry for about 12 to 24 hours, and then we'll come back and go to the next step from there. Okay, so after you've let your football sit for about 24 hours with the mud on it, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna actually take the mud off and use our other Wilson brush to remove even more of the mud. Now what you guys will see, as I mentioned before, is as we start to take this mud off, it's gonna start to turn this ball that darker brown color. And what we've done is by letting this sit and the mud soak in, it's helped to soften up the leather quite a bit. So what we're gonna need first off is our bowl with warm to hot water, and then just a rag to be able to get the actual mud off of the football. So what we're gonna wanna do is get the rag pretty wet, and then we're gonna start with just each panel. You really want to try and get as much of that mud off as possible, so that way when you're using the brush, it's not gonna ruin your brush very much. Obviously getting the mud on the brush, you're not gonna wanna use that brush for really anything else. So that's why we have 2 of those Wilson brushes that I mentioned earlier. So as you can see, all we're doing is just wiping down the ball, and so that way we can remove the mud. Now there's still gonna be some on there, but that's why we're gonna use the brush to get the rest of that off. Okay, so now that we've got the mud off, the football is gonna be a little bit damp, but you can see there's a lot more of the mud off. So now what we're gonna do, and you can wait till the football dries a little bit, or you can do it when it's damp, either or. So basically what we're gonna do is take our new brush, and we're really just gonna go back and forth on each panel and get in all of the little crevices as well to really take that mud off. And then also what this is doing is it's brushing in And with the black bristles here, it's going to help to make that football that darker color as well. Now, as you start to do this step, you'll notice that your arm is going to get pretty tired. And if you obviously have to do this with multiple footballs, it gets pretty tiring. So that's the one nice thing with using ball breakers is, once again, we do all this work for you, so you don't have to. And then by the time you get your football, it's completely broken in and game ready, so you can really just take it right as you get it and use it on the field right away and not have to go through any of this long process. All right, so now that we've got all the mud off, as you can see, the football is a lot darker. It also has that really good amount of grip to it. The leather is a lot softer as well. Now, the one thing I do recommend, kind of just as a bonus, couple tips, is I do like, after I've used the brush on the football, I do like to take the wet rag one more time and just really wipe it off again to try and get as much of that mud off as possible if there's any left over from doing the brush. And then a bonus tip that you can do that's kind of optional, it all depends on how you feel after doing the mudding process. You can do one more coat of the conditioner on the football and let that sit as well, and that'll bring out the shine on it a little bit more, add just a little bit more conditioner to soften it up even more from there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move on to our next step, which is going to be step 7, and that's actually going to be applying the wax to the football. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our wax bar here that we got in the Wilson kit. As I said before, you can buy this kit off of Wilson or Amazon. It comes with the brush and the wax bar, and I think it's about 35 bucks if you buy it directly from them. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually use the wax bar on each panel. Now, the one thing I have seen in the past that people have done is they've actually used the bar on the brush, and you don't want to do this. What you want to do is you want to use the bar right on the actual football. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this side, and all you're going to do is you're going to just go up and down on it one time on the panel, and then we're going to use the brush, and we're just going to brush that wax in. And what this wax is going to do is it's going to once again help to add an additional grip to the football, add that shine, and also help darken it up even more. But it also helps to make the football last too when you're using it outside. One thing I do like to do every once in a while, if I'm playing in a football game or something like that, every couple games, I'll actually use this brush on the football the night before, or this wax bar on the football the night before the game, so that way it has extra tack and grip when I'm using it in the actual game. All right, so we are completely finished with the wax bar, step 7. So as you can see, it turns to that really dark brown color. The only thing that you want to watch out for when you're doing this, as I mentioned before, is it can scuff up the logos a little bit. So just kind of be careful with that process when you're doing the mud and this part as well. But as you can see, it turns at that really dark brown color, and I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it adds a really good amount of extra grip and tack to the football. And this football is pretty soft now as well. So I want to show you guys the difference here and what it looks like. So this obviously is a brand new football, and this is the one we just finished. So as you guys can see, it's a night and day difference. Trying to go out and throw this football, it's going to be really slippery. You're not going to be able to throw it accurately. It's probably going to slip out of your hands a couple times compared to this one. And you can look at the other side here as well. You can see the stripes are still intact. Sure, they may be a little bit more dirty, but they're still intact, the laces and everything. So now is going to be the very last step, and that's going to be step 8, going out and using and having fun with your football. Go out, throw it around, get it in the dirt, get some touchdowns with it. And what's going to happen is by conditioning this football the way we did, it's only going to get better and better the more you use it. Everything that we put on it, all the conditioner and everything like that, the more you get it wet, that you get it dirty, all that kind of stuff, it's only going to break this ball in even more the more you use it. So I hope you guys found this useful. If you did find this video useful, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be making a lot more videos on some additional other leather footballs that we're working on as well. Hit the notification bell so you get those videos when they come out. And then also, I do like to just preference, this is not the end all be all for breaking in processes. Everybody has kind of their own different tips. So if you have a tip that you recommend for breaking a football that you've used in the past, leave it in the comments below. Other than that, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you in the next video.